I think we should just get started. Like Ryan's
Yeah.
Jerome
Okay.
knows, and Ryan's gonna be. We already know Ryan's gonna be late. And I've got a 20-minute call with a client. I couldn't move at 20. It was just when he was free, and I need to talk to this man. So
Okay, well, it's a little bit, I would say, informal. However, I have a bunch of things that I would love to go over.
Sure.
Patrick, what about you?
I'm quite sure. Okay, I will let you first cover and I will see.
Yeah. Okay.
That's nothing specific, really.
So I think the first thing that I wanted to start off was something that kind of Demi talked to me about, which is just talking about like what DI does and like kind of give you guys, if you don't, to get a better sense of some of the numbers around what we do. I'm going to use a few examples. Jane, you would have seen a few of these because I've used them in some of my presentations, so I've got them up with slides. But I think it's important.
Those are really good, Dylan.
Yeah.
It seems to resonate with all levels of who we're presenting to, whether it's property managers or operations.
Yeah. And I also want to apologize for my ignorance in terms of the nuances of how you go about selling it. That I don't have a full appreciation for, but I hope that by sharing a greater understanding of the details of the work, it allows you guys to make certain statements to shift the clients in a certain direction, if that makes sense. So the first concept that I want to highlight is the importance of the maintenance stuff. So I would say that we probably provide about half our tickets are on maintenance, so nothing to do with energy, right? And from a sales perspective and from the client perspective, it seems like a lot of times that's forgotten. Even in our own interactions with the clients and decision makers, they seem to forget that piece. The groups that really understand it and appreciate it is operators and operations supervisors. So what ends up happening, it seems, is decision makers will just default to them. They'll be like, do you get value from this? And they will trust their opinion, but they won't really understand what that value was. And if we lose an operator, if we lose a good operator or something, then the leader asks that decision, they don't get a response. They're like, well, I haven't seen the energy savings, so it must be useless. But they're failing to appreciate the entire half of what we do, which is maintenance stuff. So I'm going to show two examples to kind of like highlight that. The first is, this is just showing a pressure sensor in a water loop. And if you can see the blue line is going below the 0 line here, this is a situation that will destroy a pump. Right? Anyone in operations will see this and be like, this is a huge freaking problem. It's one of the biggest problems they could have. For us to flag this for them helps avoid this from happening in their pump. The impeller being destroyed like this, right?
What's that worth? Sorry.
Well, if this happened to both pumps, they would lose their entire cooling for the entire building. So what is it worth to have a tower? This was a tower. What is it worth for the tower to go down, lose all its cooling?
Right.
And for these pumps to be replaced, is probably looking at like $20,000, maybe up to 40 per pump.
Was that pump in Livermore by any chance?
No, this was in Centurion.
Oh.
So this is really important for people to appreciate, right? And Jane, this works against us because someone like Chris Berry doesn't care about this.
Right.
So if decision makers at Treorvest are asking for his opinion and he's like, well, the energy pieces are this, it's like, well, what about like things such as like the maintenance side, right? So when DI enhances, I'll use the word enhances in operations teams and augments them, the maintenance piece is huge. This is another example from Treorvest. This was a valve that was failing to open. And before Bert left, he told me this was his favorite thing we ever brought up for him. And for him, it solidified keeping the service at ATB South was this single ticket. And it was basically showing that he had a valve that was failing to open. And we caught it because the pressure was spiking. And it's this bottom chart. You can see this blue line is really high, which showed us that the valve was actually failing to open. And what this was causing was his pumps to basically push against nothing. It's called deadheading. They were pushing the water against nothing. It couldn't move. And that causes the pump to fail in about 4 to 6 months. If that would have happened and their seals would have broke, one, they would have lost their cooling system, but they also would have had a leak at the top of the tower. And the cost would have probably been in the $100 to $1 million range of damage.
Wow.
When I used to work at the University of Alberta, they had a team of people that was 24/7 on site in a control room and walking the buildings, just to catch this, just to catch potential water leaks, because they were so expensive. They paid people to continuously monitor their systems all the time, all through the night, because it's so expensive to have water leaks. So if you can get why like someone like me is so passionate about this, because like this is such a huge part of our value case that so often is forgotten. Does that make sense to everybody?
Absolutely.
Can we not, Dylan, you know how we track open tickets and how much they can save or could save? Can we not do the same for maintenance item, caught this, potential $1 million failure? Like, is that?
We do, but it's really hard to quantify. Like, how do you
Mm.
quantify avoiding something that could have happened? You know what I mean?
Right.
So what we try to do is like in the meetings, I try to bring, hey, this is what happened. Look, we avoided it. We just did it with I did it with Grandview. I was like, look, we caught that your sprinkler room was getting really cold. We were avoiding a freezing incident. What do you guys think that's worth? And we talk about it, it's really hard to quantify. So sometimes we just pick a number. And if you weren't in that meeting or don't talk to one of those people that were in that meeting, you have no perspective on what just happened and that we avoided that. And that kind of happens like a higher level. If they don't attend the meeting, they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So that's why for us, I'm always saying like attend the meetings, right?
Yeah.
Come to see, which is Bueno's approach. They're just like come to our meetings and see what we do. They don't even quantify their things, right? We do, but they don't even do it. They just say come and see the value for yourself. And the maintenance part is really huge on that because it's like really hard for the industry to quantify, including Rycom. But you can see it when you're in those meetings and you catch things like this. People get it. They're like, holy shit, this was huge. Does that make sense? Any other questions?
So I'm curious, in the amount of meetings that you and the team have done, how often do these type of situations, like that you guys got ahead of it, like how often do you find it?
Well, usually we find maintenance things before we find the energy things, which can be frustrating because we jump into a site and everybody give us the energy, give us the savings on your energy bill so that we can justify what we sold. But the first step is your equipment even operating properly, right? Once we get it operating properly, then we can talk about how you make it run better. Right. So like the first year for some sites, we'll be catching stuff like this. And it's often easier to catch. So like Menkes is a great example. We're just working through defects right now, all the freaking time. It's just like this sequence wasn't put in. This isn't even doing what it's supposed to be doing, just constantly. Now, when you luck out and those also have an energy side, it's great, but they don't always do. So sometimes we have to force ourselves to ignore the maintenance stuff because some people are so attached to the energy stuff. And this includes the clients. Like if they haven't been, they're not thinking about this. Like Jerome, MCW is guilty of this. Like MCW is like, where's the energy? Where's the energy? Well, let's talk about the fact that this boiler is not working, right? Yeah, that doesn't save you energy, but this is still a huge freaking operational thing, right?
But MCW are probably energy consultants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All they care about is the energy savings. Like yeah, because I know like GWLRA uses MCW on sites and they rely on them all about like, tell me when my energy's going off of base.
Yeah. So these are really big things that are really big value cases. When I was a consultant, we got paid all the time, thousands of dollars to come in and investigate these things after they've happened. Right?
Mhm.
We would get paid $5,000 to $10,000 to come and tell them how the heck what happened. And often we would have to do redesigns to try to fix it. So I remember in this exact example with the pumps deadheading, we got paid a ton of money to come in and assess it, and then a ton of money to redo everything because they kept happening. This happened. But they didn't have the additional troubleshooting support, right? The monitoring. Anyway, we should move on for the sake of time.
Actually, no, hold on a sec. I got a question about that, Dylan.
Yeah.
So you said a couple interesting things there. So there is consultants that get involved once these things actually do blow up. And we found it before it blew up. So like, I think that's easy to put a cost justification in there. Is it us that's having a problem justifying the cost, or is it the customer having a hard time justifying the cost? The
It's
savings.
both. It's both. Avoided costs are really hard for people to quantify, justify, and also just I think humans, we just naturally to pay for something to avoid something in the future that could happen is a worse sell than to immediately have a result, right? Like an energy thing. Like you immediately take down your bill. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I think we just need to get, I think there's a catastrophic leak versus, we solved it now. Like maybe we just need to figure out a better way to articulate that, because there's value there.
For sure. I think it is a challenge. Like we can, like the person in the meeting can articulate it in the meeting and the operators can get it, but so often it stops there. Right. And it never goes beyond that, especially if the operators rotate or leave the site and we get a new one. All that sense of historical work is just gone.
Yeah, see, I think if our primary service is figuring out all the maintenance thing, then I
But
think
half,
we need to.
half.
Yeah, well, but you mentioned it's a good chunk of the majority, and it's the first chunk that we get to. I
Yeah.
think we need to figure out a way to assign a dollar value to that, and if they decide that that's not the right number, then we can say, okay, well, how would you calculate this? Like, I think it's such an important thing to calculate, especially when that seems to be like what Bueno does. I don't know, it's just an observation.
No, I'm just making a note on that. I think you're correct. I mean, my takeaway from that is like, can DI define a process of defining the value of that, and then share that with the client to be transparent? Like, this is how we're calculating it, because it's been just abstract for the longest time.
Yeah, the Berkeley report, because I always put that in my presentations when I talk to, like, it's real. There's a report done by Berkeley Labs. Like, is there not calculations in there that we can use that are like industry standard calculations?
Perhaps I haven't seen that, so I'd have to take a look.
Oh, okay.
Can you send it to me?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Next concept to
we can do
understand
that
with
too.
regards to what we're doing, and this is Kamal and I are discussing this, and we both came to the same sort of sense of number, but half of what we find does not use the fault detection. So half is energy and half is maintenance. Half uses the insights and the fault detection, and half is just our own expertise. Think about this in terms of competing with people that just use the analytics piece, the insights and the algorithms, right? Things like BrainBox. Half of what we identify doesn't use it.
It's you guys doing it.
It's our own brains. Basically, we're acting as consultants, looking at their building and finding issues. And for some sites, like after the first few years,
A week or two ago, shock.
it shifts to like 80%. Like most of what we identify is the skill of the DI team itself, right? This is important, right? We are augmenting the analytics, right? RICOM augments their analytics with engineering expertise, right?
Yeah.
And that
Dylan,
ratio becomes, go ahead, Jerome.
Jump in, like, it's always been a bit of a struggle to break out the engineering services from the analytics, like we could just sell engineering services with no analytics and still find our clients a lot of savings.
Yes.
Which is what a lot of energy consultants like MCW or Energy at Work, that's what they do, right? Is they'll just like meet with clients on a monthly basis and just look at BAS data kind of thing. But then we're also trying to sell the platform, but the way that we've made the platform sale digestible is like through the promise of savings, which in truth is human generated, right?
So what I think that is important to think about the service. Now, this is my take. I've said it for a long time, that what RICOM sells is rent and engineer. The software, the analytics, is just the tool you hand the engineer to speed them up. So what that means is all the insight is doing is saying, hey, maybe go look over here. That's it. You're selling consulting services, you're selling an engineering expertise, and then the analytics package is just the tool. When people sell that tool to operators, they struggle to use it because they don't have time or the expertise to understand it, if that makes sense. So often it seems like we focus on our marketing and selling, oh, it's this software package, and we can add on some engineers, when it's actually kind of the opposite. right? You don't buy the hammer and then hire someone else to come use it. You hire them and then they use the hammer to do the job, if that makes sense, right? So an example of this is like this one here, for example. This, I've got it out here, identified by manual review. In my presentations, I try to highlight this and I show examples of like, this was caught by fault detection. This was caught by us just looking at it. And what this was showing was the temperature of air through a duct system was different at an air handling unit and at a device downstream. So the air handling unit was showing the temperature was low here. You can see it kind of for yourself, this blue line. It's saying the temperature is low. But once it got to the unit downstream, it was the orange line, it was 6 degrees warmer. That doesn't make sense, right? We don't really have analytics for that, right? But that's too much. That's too much heat gain. And what was the problem was the sensor at the air handling unit was in the wrong spot. And they didn't know this for years. So what was happening was there was two mains and the sensor was too close to one of them. And the coil failed on the top coil. So the sensor thought the air was cold, but when the two streams mixed, it was warm. So for years, they had been unable to keep, like this affected the cooling capability of the whole area served by air handling. They had no friggin' idea that for years, they just had one of their coils was just dead because the sensor was in the wrong spot and kind of hiding it. But no analytics caught this. We didn't have analytics for this. This was just me just looking at it going, well, that doesn't make sense, right? Half of what we find is just manual review. Jerome, remember when you and I did Prologis and Josh said, go look at the heat recovery for the Prologis thing? And we looked at it and their heat wheel wasn't working. No analytics caught it. We just had to go look at it.
Yeah.
So this is a really important concept for DI service.
How many of these big ticket items get brought up on a site, Dylan? Like, is this like the majority of sites come with these?
I would say all the big ticket items are human generated.
A lot of
And
them.
then how many in our monthly reviews, how many of those are flagged?
Like
most sites, like is this like if you look at all like the monthly reviews that have been done this month, like how many of them have not this particular problem, but like you've pointed this out that this is a big problem, so glaringly, like this is a place where it can be improved. Like how many of those kind of tickets are raised?
Maybe once every 2 months. Part of the problem is you can put something like this in front of an operator, but it takes them usually 2 to 3 months to wrap their head around it and find and investigate it and find the problem. And if we put too many of these, they get overwhelmed and then they start not doing anything. Like they just like don't know where to look next. So we kind of have to slow roll it at times. Which also helps for our sake in that we've only got so many hours and we'll give them one big one and a couple of small ones, if that makes sense. And just call it there and wait till next month.
And how long would it take for something like this to get like go from like raised to closed?
3 months.
To resolution. Oh, 3 months.
We've got one for Jane. I've got one for Trio Vest where they've got their 4 biggest air handling units, and 2 of them are running 20% harder than the other 2, and they have no freaking idea why. And it represents tens of thousands of dollars of energy to them to fix this, and they're on month 8 now because they're busy. Right. And the system is working. They know it's weird. John never noticed it before. And I brought it in front of him. I was like, this is really weird. Like, again, the analytics didn't flag it, but I was like, these units shouldn't be this different in speed. And he's like, yeah, I can't believe we never noticed this before. But they just haven't. They've been slowly chipping away at it. But they've got so many things. They're on month 8. And even though this one represents tens of thousands of dollars of value to them. So it can take time, Derek. It can really take the client's time, which is also one of the reasons why I really value, again, pushing for decision makers to be in the frickin' meeting so you can help your operators execute by saying, authorizing them to have resources, seeing what's going on, telling them to do certain things. It's huge, right? When we do CT read and Victor jumps on the call, it's amazing how fast things move and how fast they start responding to things.
Victor also understands. So I know for some of my sites, you've got 2 very broad categories of people. You've got the technical people, which are very small in my accounts. And then you've got the bean counters who don't actually understand any of it. And they will understand the dollars, and then that's why I was asking, like, if we can quantify the dollars with some kind of like formula that says this is industry standard, this is how much, this is how, we calculate extra life cycle speed, whatever, to this, then, the dollars, and it can get approved quicker through the money guys, because they don't understand the technical stuff.
I will say that not every different team members have different skills, and some people are better at communicating in layman's terms some of the stuff. But anyone that needs clarity on some of the technical stuff, all they have to do is reach out, and we can set up, like, I can sit in and walk them through and act as an interpreter. Like, I have done that before for energy managers, where we set up separate meetings, and it's like, let's go through, what does this mean? What happened here? Where's the justification? Let them ask their questions, especially if they don't feel comfortable doing it in a group setting. We can set up an individual meeting. Like, all of that is open to them, right? We can walk them through and act as their guide. But it starts with those people having a willingness to sit and engage with us, not saying, well, they didn't do it for me, right? Because even if we quantify it, it still sometimes isn't enough. Like, they still like, well, I don't know where those numbers came from, and I don't trust them, is the answer then we get. So I'm like, there needs to be a willingness to sit with us, I find. But maybe I'm wrong. That's just my experience.
I would say too, Derek, like, in terms of pricing, we're carrying like 4 hours per month per site. So sometimes if Dylan will uncover one of these, it's like the amount of work that goes into one, doing all of the analysis, meeting with all the stakeholders, convincing everyone this has to be done, seeing it through to the end. We're like way underwater.
Well, yeah.
However, then the savings
scope thing,
but then the savings allow us to, like, it buys us another year of employment at that site,
Yeah.
So it's hard to like contend with that, because like the team, like, they'll chase these down when they do find them, but like they can't just give up a week and focus on this. They have 4 other sites that they have to manage and all of these different kinds of things.
No, I get it, and that totally makes total sense to me. But on the flip side, we also, like, if you're asking these people to prove something, if we can't give them, and all they understand is dollars, and we can't give them that, then, it's really hard to get it approved, and then it's hard for them to renew the contract. Just it works the other way.
It's true.
I think it depends on who the engineer is too. Like, Basil did a really good job last week at Prologis. He did like a full breakdown of potential savings for based on using occupancy data to tie it into their building automation system. And so that was nice, because that satisfies the bean counter part, right? And then you can also satisfy the technical part.
Yeah.
Because I totally agree. You gotta
I
gotta be able to check the money. People.
Yeah, I need like, they don't care, like, they just want to know how much it's gonna be, and that's it. They don't care about the squiggly lines.
Yeah.
But obviously the squiggly lines are very important.
I think it depends on who you're talking to, though. There's different audiences. And just out of the gate, like, to learn that 50% comes from the team, has nothing to do with energy. I think maybe there needs to be a different positioning of the service. Or we need to enhance the maintenance.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
I don't think we're elevating that part enough, and give some of those very concrete examples that Dylan spoke about.
Yeah, I mean, one of the goals in the past was to get the DI team in a place where certain individuals who are considered senior could start to engage more with the decision makers for each client, and act as this, to be like, hey, this is what you hit this month for like some really big wins here and here and here, like these quarterly meetings with the clients. But we've had challenges operationally with stability in terms of staffing and whatnot, and workload, that we've never been able to realize that. But we've identified even last year that there's this hole in terms of, I would say broadly, and I think everybody can here agree, in any way that we're needing to do it, we're not adequately educating, informing, and communicating to decision makers for our clients what it's all about. Like, it's not going high enough.
Yeah, I think to add to this, like, we could have a conversation about how we want to frame the service for all of our existing accounts and buildings that we're working with and so on, and highlight the fact that, you know, our team has found all of these things over the years, and that's a reason that they should keep us, because we've been able to demonstrate that there's like, we're like insurance to them almost, you know? We're solving problems for them before they blow up into like crises, right? But with new clients and new business development,
You think it's harder?
I don't think it's harder. I just think that the business needs to tell us what it wants to be, you know? Like, do we want to be an engineering company, or do we want to be a company that deploys FDD? I
Yeah,
don't know if we can realistically be both, you know? And my impression from Denny and Casey is that if they just want to be like selling platform, and that's like the Ainsworth model going forward, then why would we make the engineering our strength, you know?
That's a valid point, yeah.
So,
Good to firm that up. Cause yeah, I think
because like building out the engineering team is like, we can do it. It's just a lot of work. There's a lot of human capital that we would have to
Mhm.
invest in.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have great engineers on the team like Dylan, but
And I think the conversation about bringing like things higher as well, we have to be careful how we do that. Cause I started doing that with Colliers and Trio Vest, but then when you start that process, there's asks that come out of that, right? They want to see data differently. They
yeah.
want to know this and that. And then all of a sudden, then it goes back to the team that's operationally constrained.
yeah,
And then you're dead in the water, and then it ends up having a negative effect, right?
yeah,
So I think we just need to be mindful that, you know, there will be work that comes out of those quarterly meetings that we need to make sure we have time for.
yeah.
Okay,
Just to
are you
add
guys ready
to
to?
what I'm saying, Dylan, sorry, like, if we made a decision that like we want the engineering to be our strength, my view is that we would have to position ourselves to compete directly against the energy managers out there, like MCW and Energy at Work.
And EnerShare?
No.
Okay.
Because they only do capital projects.
Okay.
But there's companies like, I mean, even Brightly offers monthly meetings where they'll review the utility performance over the last month. Like, if we really wanted to focus on the engineering, we should vertically integrate that and look at the utility consumption and the equipment consumption across the board, you know? Like, there is a business case to like build out the whole suite of energy services, but we've always shied away from it because it was always like the FDD is the front and center piece of the offering, and that's how the business has always told us to do it, you know?
I agree with you though, because it, you know, I know all those pieces were built out, right? Like, I know that I think it was Kamal or somebody had built things to scrape bills and utility data, like we had the pieces in place. It just, you know, it just hasn't been stitched together like a Brightly, right?
My understanding of Casey's vision was that we are putting together a technology solution, not an engineering solution, you know?
Yeah.
So I fully agree with Dylan that like there's huge value here, but it's not up to Dylan or I, as far as I know, to make that call.
It's true. The one other thought that I would add to that, Jerome, is like I think Ainsworth in the picture does change things in that I do wonder if they want to sell everything. Like sort of say like, okay, you know, we're going to use the tool, we're going to have the engineers, and then we're going to send technicians, kind of like Demi's vision of the remote and like issuing work orders and like do that to just be like, you know, it's just a part of if you, a building owner, want to outsource some of your building operations, we now have the components that we could use to try to help with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say the advantage that we have right now is that it's still early stage with Ainsworth, so
Yeah.
if we did want to double down on engineering and felt like that was the right thing to do, we could advocate for that to them, you know, like they have not decided at this point what the
'Cause
fate of like the long-term plan for DI will be over 5 years, you know, they would be open to ideas if you presented them to them for sure.
Because the everlasting problem with the software is who's going to use the hammer, right? Who's going to use it? And clients seem perpetually struggling to use it. And they just say, I want somebody else to use it on my behalf.
Yeah,
So if
you're
you
the
get
expert,
that-
you do it, just tell me what to do.
Yeah, then it starts to segue more into the engineering side because it's like, well, if we're already looking at it, I might as well look over here and do a little bit manually. which is what I think Rycom just stumbled on naturally.
I mean, I could tell you that every proposal I've put out for like analytics to Ainsworth so far has, all I say is you tell your client, we're going to train the Ainsworth technicians to use this, and they're going to use it in their maintenance services. And if you want to frame that as being like, we'll use the same number of maintenance hours, but you'll get more out of it. Or you could say, we'll use less maintenance hours, but do the same amount of stuff for you and offset that with this platform. We could frame it that way, but that's essentially been my pitch to like the Ainsworth BAS contract, like maintenance contract folks to date. In some like portfolio cases that we've been having conversations, we've been talking about doing engineering hours for like portfolio level and like just focus on like big ticket items across sites and that kind of thing. But then all of the like quote unquote like maintenance fault detection, broken sensors, cycling valves, all of that would just be dealt with by techs, right? And so our team wouldn't have to look at that anymore. And then we would just be the integrator. Data uptime, critical alarms, nothing else. No human hours unless otherwise stated on our end. So, because that's how they've been selling copper tree this whole time. And they've put copper tree into tons of buildings.
But I don't know if people are super happy with copper tree either. I feel like it's bundled into an existing.
I think the advantage of Bueno is that it's like, for a technician to use it, I think it's a bit more straightforward.
Well, and it's, I
For
was
sure.
chatting about it with Tim last week at Prologis, and he was saying, you know, problem that he sees with it is, because he's got it at Spectrum Way with Ainsworth, he's saying that it's basically like the police policing themselves, right? So he likes Rycom because it's somebody, third party that's, well, third dish.
Yes.
Yeah. Quotation mark.
What I've told clients to date, so anyone that's like, if the sale is being done through Ainsworth, that's one thing. But like, Rycom is still a separate entity. And the analytics group within Rycom is still separate from like the Ainsworth BIS group. Like, yes, we have the same parent company, but we're like different divisions with different KPIs.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay, here's an example. You know how big banks like RBC have like mergers and acquisitions on one floor, and then 10 feet away is like capital markets?
Right.
Those people can't talk to each other because they'd be breaking like all the laws, you know?
Right.
But
Yeah,
the
it's
banks still manage to do this.
Different worlds. I mean, I see
You know what I
with
mean?
Siemens even who builds BASs, right? Like, they'll hire us in one department and then we'll compete against a different one, right? Like,
Yeah.
because they just don't even know. So, yeah, I get it. And I think from client's perspective, it's the same mindset.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think they're seeing us that integrated where we couldn't do that work.
All right, I'm
Yeah.
gonna move along. If that's okay,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
The next concept I want to go over and want to move into is assessing a site. Like, what makes a good site for analytics, at least from DI's perspective, right? And what I've done is I created this guide, and there's a table in here called assessing a prospective site. Now, now Demi, I know that there's work on like a portal, and maybe some of this can be pulled into those questions in that portal and explanations. But for now, I've just got it in this table form, and I've ordered it. So number one is, in my opinion, the most important thing for assessing a site. I'm going to zoom in on the way. So I've got what is it? What is the factor? Why does it matter? And how do you investigate it? All right. I'm not saying necessarily who needs to do this, but it's just part of the process of figuring out, should we pursue something, right? So the first one is, does the site have an existing source of mechanical building data? Existing is highlighted there, right? Usually that's a building automation system. If you guys are looking at a site and they do not have a building automation system, cough, cough, Avenue Living, it is a really hard sell, because building automation systems are expensive. You don't usually put them in solely for monitoring. Usually they're there to control, right? They're to participate in the running of the building. So it's really uncommon for a client to willingly put in a building automation system, right? Just for our service. There has to be other cases. So if they don't have it, you might want to just pause and ask yourself, well, maybe they're not going to go for this, right? Once they see the bill. To put it in perspective, when I would price building automation systems, we would often price them at like $1,000 a point. So think about like a 500 point, 500 points, right? That's a lot of money. Right there, they can be really expensive. Now it helps if the downstream sensors, everything's existing, right? Reduces that cost. But just to put in your mind that they're pricey. Building automation systems are really expensive. Any questions about that?
No, that makes sense.
Okay. The type, now if they have an existing source of if they have an existing BES, you're like, yes, they do. The type of it matters. So we need to know what the make is. In particular, Ullerton, right? So if you see an Ullerton BES, the way that they organize their data in the backend is using generic identifiers. So each point will be named like analog input 3, analog input 4, binary input 6. Think about how we're supposed to organize that. It's really difficult. It probably doubles the amount of deployment time that we have to price. Ullerton BESs are expensive, so you need to collect the make. Right? You need to figure out what it is. All right? We also need to know when the BES was installed. This is because old BESs will often have holes that make the networking difficult. And Patrick, obviously experiences that. I find the older the BES, the more there's issues with their BES that allow us to not get all the data. An example of this, in Vancouver at the CT Read site there, Ryan, we are missing 40% of the site data, and we are still missing 40% of the data 2 years later. They just don't have it because their network has been all fucked up by their tenants. Think about that, right? Like that affects their value case significantly, and they need to be aware of that, right? So if it's, we need to get a sense of like, do they have a BS? What kind of BS is it? How old is it? All right. The other part here I got is, do they have a controls contractor that regularly maintains their controls? This is important because if they don't have that, when we get to the stage of like telling them to do things, just like CT Read, and we're like, hey, you're missing 40%, they're not able to do anything. So CT Read in Vancouver has had good success with their mechanical contractor and their site operator, but they have had a huge buildup of all these controls issues because they did not have regular service from controls contractor, and it's taking them a really long time to set that up. Right? It really affects the value case. So clients that have that ready to go, or at least if they don't, are informed that that's useful for them to start planning for, will get more benefit from our service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Number 2 most important thing, that there's a single source of data instead of multiple. If we have multiple, if you think about Bloor Islington or Jerome, think about MCW where they had 3 buildings they want to integrate and they all had 3 different building automation systems. That's 3 different integration solutions. Super expensive, super fast, very unlikely they're going to do it. The dream is like the one we just did in Calgary, Ryan, where they had multiple buildings on one BES. Fantastic. Much more economical to integrate, right? We've got to just connect to one spot, get all this data. It's fantastic. The more they have centralized their data into one place where we can access it, the better. Esquimalt is another good example of this, Jane, where we were able to pitch them, hey, we'll put in one Hive cabinet and we'll connect to all 4 buildings because they had done all the work to network all their buildings together, right? It's very attractive. Right? If they have these sources spread out, now this includes things such as meters, right? Are your meters also hooked up into your BES? Much easier for us to integrate. If we have to integrate them separately, cost goes up, right? And generally, if the cost goes up, then they see the number and they go, maybe not. So the more centralized their data is in a single place where we can get it at, the better, right? So the questions around that, right? Do you have one building automation system for each building or just individuals, right? Are your meters hooked up into your building automation system? These questions are super helpful in getting a sense that the cost upfront will be either low or high. Make sense?
Yeah, I'm assuming the majority of them do, but like, do you find that the most sites that have a BAS also have the metering data integrated in?
It's really common, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But not always. Comox, they didn't, and they want us to integrate it, so we're having to spend time and effort to do that. But we had to put in our proposal that we were going to hook up only once because we weren't going to go to every building and do it repeatedly. We're going to give you one connection. So you figure out how you want us to do that. right? If you want us to hook up to the meters in this building, we'll do it, but then don't call us, it'll be another bill later. So we kind of have to be careful around saying we're only going to integrate this and this and this, right? Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep.
So it can get us, it's a really easy filtering question that can rule out sites right away, right? Like it's like, okay, no, this is good. The integrations cost is going to be triple what a usual site would be. It's a harder sell. Right. Okay. Moving on. The third, lots of data. So it has an existing source of data. It's a single source, so we're not trying to pull from multiple places, and there's lots of data in there. This is a really important metric. The average point count for our sites is 5,800 points. If you have a point count for a building that's significantly below that, you need to ask yourself, is this going to be a good value case, right? The more information and data that we have, the more opportunity there is to identify value. So smaller sites are more challenging. Doesn't mean we can't do them and provide value. It just becomes a lot harder. It also reduces the payback because if the integration is a flat fee, right, we have to do the same things regardless. You have less opportunities to pay that back, right? So bigger sites are always better. Is just the philosophy, right? We need to have that caution. One of the ways we can answer this question, do we have lots of data, is this point count, which you guys all understand the concept of a point count, right? Every time I've seen a client try to determine it, they're usually way off. Clients really suck at estimating their point counts. The best way for us to do it is to get the controls drawings for their building automation system, right? Get us those drawings and get us BAS access. That's why we're always asking for BAS access. Get us the bloody BAS access. It makes Patrick's job easier to figure out the integration, and we can accurately figure out their point counts. We'll go in there, we'll count them up, right? And it's a really accurate number because we went in there and counted them, right? This is what you've got. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What we have to do without it is we have to guess it. We have to guess it and then iterate with the client sometimes after the fact. Like it doesn't mean we can't do it without the point count, but it's tougher. Let's say we guess 2,000 and it comes in at 800. Now it's a harder, it's less likely that we'll identify wins. You know what I mean? And then the client's like, well, why didn't you tell me up front? You know what I mean? It can be a little messy. So we like to get the number right. Right, so this is why we're always asking for these. They're pretty much always essential. We need controls, drawings, BAS, something like that, right? Lastly, I've got a note here. If they can't get us BAS access and they can't get us their literature, can you get us screenshots? Just send us freaking pictures. Somebody get a camera, go to your workstation, take pictures of the damn graphics, send them to us. Even that's better than nothing, right? Get us something. Okay. Now this is a little subsection on terminal units. So I said lots of data is good, right? Where that data is coming from helps the value case. So what I mean by that is not all building automation systems monitor all the equipment in a building. And Jerome, this is an example with the Canadian Tire site where the BES was only doing their mechanical rooms, which hurt the value case, right? It wasn't doing the uni heaters in the warehouse or all the other components, which you're like, man, I wish it would, because that would really help. ATB South, for example, Jane, just does the central equipment. Sometimes building automation systems are subsets of the equipment, and that is really important to know. Bloor Islington was like that, Ryan. It didn't do the VAVs, which makes it harder for us to identify value. VAVs, unit heaters, anything that's distributed through a building is called a terminal unit. Building automation systems that monitor the central equipment and the terminal units are better for value. They're so much better for value. And this is for two primary reasons. It's really hard for operators to monitor all the terminal units through a building. So there's a lot of value in the analytics helping detect problems for them that they can't see scattered throughout their building, right? The operator will go to a mechanical room and check the mechanical equipment centrally, but they won't check the VAVs. They won't check the fin tube radiators. They won't know about any of that. So for us to monitor is really, it helps with value. And the other piece is what the terminal units are doing helps us see what the central equipment should be doing. Remember that example I showed where I compared the air handling unit to a terminal unit downstream and saw that the temperatures of the air that they were getting is different? And that was a clue that there was a problem. You need the complete picture of the building to do that. So when you're looking at a building automation system and we're like, okay, you've got a building automation system, it's doing all this, it's got this many points. What are those points for? Like what equipment is your BLES doing? Is it just the central equipment or is it also the terminal units? Like that question is super relevant, which often nobody thinks about. Does that make sense?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, so I've got the analytics is more valuable when we have visibility of the central scope and the terminal units. Ask if it monitors the terminal units of the building.
And is terminal units like the common like wording for that? Because I usually just would call it like VAV controls.
You could use but you need to say like
Terminal unit.
yeah, terminal means end of line, right? So it's like
Yeah.
it's a piece of equipment in the rooms that's at the end of a distribution system, whether it's air or water, right? So a VAV is at the end of the
Well, it
line.
could be a heat pump, it could be
Yeah.
a
It could
VAV.
be, so it's it's a broader term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the
Okay.
mechanical equipment in all the rooms.
Right.
You can
Okay.
think about it like that. Those are the terminal units. And then there'll be like lots of them scattered around, right? Unit heaters,
Yeah.
heat pumps, etc. Those are terminal units.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this?
No, it's good.
This is just the explanation, like I gave the 2 reasons why it matters. Okay, the last thing around data. So you're looking at a site, it's got the BES, it's got lots of data, it's got terminal units, and it has heat pumps, extra win. Heat pumps are always freaking failing. If you have a site with heat pumps, you can tell your client, look, they're the #1 most commonly failing terminal unit because they have a lot of moving parts. For our sites that we do service for with heat pumps, I feel like our service will never end because we are always catching failing heat pumps. Prologis is a great example, Ryan. We just, even in the last meeting, what were we doing? Flagging broken heat pumps.
Right.
So those sites in particular, we're just always able to flag maintenance issues.
And in that case, then maybe our value prop's a bit different because we're not necessarily saving the money. Potentially it could cost them more because they're going to be using the heat pumps. But
Correct. We're telling them to
we're
fix them,
maintaining
make them
tenant
work.
comfort.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Which I think is like important too, because I feel like too often we lean on ROI. And like from what I've seen, a lot of the sites don't ever have an ROI, but they're well-run buildings. And so I think like Rycom needs to do better, like all of us at like positioning the other values of DI in having a well-run building and like improving tenant comfort. Because Prologis, like that's like, I think the biggest thing with them is like just keeping the building well-maintained.
Well,
That's what we call ongoing commissioning.
if you have a broken heat
Specifically.
pump
Right.
and nobody knows about it and we flag it, is there not some sort of a value? Like why,
Well, it's hard to
Is-
quantify.
is the ROI, like maybe you don't. need
It's
that heat
so
pump?
hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Why is
And
it
the
that hard?
clients, we
'Cause it's a
usually
tenant
like,
comfort.
Because we'll be like, oh, we saved you this much money, and they'll be like, oh, well, it's bullshit, I would have seen it anyways, kind of thing, you know?
And if it's a broken heat pump, fixing it, there's no ROI, it's actually gonna cost them more, but there is a value
There's
in,
there has to be a reason why there's a heat pump in the
There-
ceiling to begin.
there's a value in making the tenant comfortable, but I don't think you can quantify that.
And even if you did, the tenant, like the client will disagree with the value we're associating to it.
yeah, it's
They don't.
really tricky. It's a tricky
Yeah.
thing in the industry for sure. Anyway, I'm going to keep going just in the essence of time. So heat pumps are bonus sites. It's the best terminal unit for us to monitor. Number 4, the most important thing, there are no large mechanical renovations coming, right? Jane, if you remember Centrio,
Train.
right? Any project that they're going to do that's going to impact their controls will break our deployment and we'll have to redeploy it. And it's another additional cost and it pisses the clients off. So we need to be asking, okay, we're going to set this up. Like, do you have anything forecasted, right? Because you need to understand this feedback loop that if you change the controls, you'll break it for us. And then we'll have to redo it. They just need to be aware and know that that's part of their planning. Right? You're basically paying to have us for a few years here. Don't do anything too major. Make sense?
Yep, definitely.
Okay. It also, as an additional bonus, is if the client is going to replace things in the future, what always happens to us is they'll say, well, I won't fix that because it'll get fixed in the future. We just are constantly in a game of flagging issues that they just don't do anything about. Because they're like, I'll just leave it and fix it next year. And it's really hard for us to like close tickets and present value when we just flag things that like, we're going to replace it. It's like always the same thing again and again. It's very annoying. Okay, number 5, the site has notable energy consumption. This is where we get to the numbers. Obviously, saving energy is how we can justify our service. We estimate our payback based on percentages applied to their energy consumption. So if a building consumes a certain amount of energy, we apply these factors between 4 to 8%. So I threw some numbers in here. We save 4% for the first year, 6% by the second year, and 8% after the end of 3 years. So we're going to reduce your energy bills by 8% after 3 years. And we put that often in our proposals. Those numbers are just generic. They're just arbitrary percentages, right? There's a little bit of thought into them, but that's how we're proposing that value case, right? So you can imagine if their bills are bigger, it helps our case. All right. I threw in a little example in here. In order for us to do this, we need to know their utility consumption, which is why we're always asking for utility bills. If you want this in your proposals, you have to get us the utility bills, which is pretty much natural gas and power. If you don't get us this, we can't come up with this number. Right? Does that make sense? One other way to help with this is to ask for the building square footage size, like how big of a building is talking. We can consider to get a sense of what the energy consumption might be. All right. All right. If they have large utility consumption, the next most important thing is that their utility costs are high. Clients that have low utility costs is bad for us. Right? As weird as that sounds, I mean, it's good for the client and it's good for the earth. But for us, when we identify opportunities to save energy, the more expensive that energy is for our client, the better it is, right? In terms of payback of our service. So we need to know their utility rates, right? So I've got here, like, what are their current utility rates? Will they have fixed contracts in the future, right? Because a lot of sites will sign those and their rates will go down. And we need to know that because that's what they're actually going to be measuring against is their new future rates. And also, do they have any cogen or solar or things on site that discount their energy costs, right? If they avoid that, if they reduce it, then it's less attractive to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That comes up quite a bit. Are there any, from the DI team's experience, any regions within Canada we should not even bother because we know their rates are a lot less?
I don't think so. I think it can shift though. So an example would be in Alberta, power savings are usually a bit of a focus. But even though our utilities are broadly cheap here, natural gas is so cheap here that power usually tends to be more important. But for like the site in Vancouver, their power is really cheap, but their gas is through the roof. Like their gas is super expensive. Anything we do that saves gas really makes a difference to them. But site to site, it can differ. Region, it can differ. It's honestly all across the board. The best way to assess it is just like, what are your rates? What are your future rates expected to be, right? Do you have any contracts in place? Just what are they? And then we can advise you based on that. I would just ask on a client by client basis. Right?
Up to this point, has there ever been a site we've said we couldn't do anything because the cost of electricity and the cost of gas was low? Have we ever come into that situation?
I would say not on the utility costs, but yes, on the energy consumption. Like if the energy consumption is low enough, which is there is a time when I, like for myself, I would maybe say no, let's not do this one. This is a bad one.
We've never like declined to give a proposal on the basis of like low energy savings.
Okay.
It's always on the basis of like not a good candidate to deploy FTD at all.
I've seen it with 2020 Robert Barassa when the team was looking at that one. That one was like, I think the DI team was saying like, this isn't a good candidate.
Yeah, I mean, Quebec
And
generally has the
It
lowest.
went anyways,
energy
and I
rates.
think it was a good example of showing like, DI team says, no, we go ahead anyways, and kind of DI team was right. Like we were way, way low on that.
Okay.
What you do if the energy side is not attractive, you go to the other, which is, hey, half of what we do is maintenance. So Jane, Avenue Living with the wing nut, we're not going to save them energy with that. It's all maintenance. Small sites with low power consumption, low energy consumption, but there's still a value case just doing the maintenance stuff, right? And Anthony saw that and gets it, right?
Yep.
So if you have a site that's not necessarily,
Yeah.
they're
Where it
producing
is.
their own power.
We're not doing it.
That's what won CT REIT was the maintenance side. They didn't,
Exactly.
like, everyone was focused on the numbers and we almost lost the deal way back. And once we flipped our focus to being well-run buildings, that was like, that's what they wanted to hear the whole time. So I think it's really important to flush that out with clients early. It's like, what is the driver for them? Is it maintenance or savings?
Yeah,
And it
I
affects our
don't-
proposal, because if these numbers are bad, then it makes us less inclined to put a table that says your future energy savings, because we don't want it to look bad. So we might opt to just remove it and put generic statements about like, yeah, we're gonna hit maintenance, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 7, available incentives from either the government or the utilities. Obviously, this has an impact on the clients. I don't need to tell you guys. You guys know about this. I've got some terms here for if you hear about incentives, the sort of words to look out for: fault detection diagnostics, ongoing commissioning, existing building commissioning, or real-time energy management are all labels that could be put on incentive programs that could apply to us. And could be relevant. The challenge here is identifying if they are relevant, and the work that goes into that. Somebody's got to do it. Don't know who, but I've just got here what the step is. We've got to research it online, check government websites, etc. Usually you need to collect the site address and building square footage, because sometimes that's a filtering mechanism for the incentives. They won't look at buildings unless they're a certain size. So that's a relevant piece of information for this.
So, do you know if Demetrius or anybody's working with Ainsworth on looking into those incentives? Because I know Ainsworth has a dedicated resource focused on incentive programs. So I'm wondering if like we're tapping into that.
I do not know it. I think it's been scattered in the past. I did some for D&D in BC because they wanted it part of the contract, so I was doing that. Jerome has done some with New York and Ainsworth, but to be honest, it's not been formalized. Like RICOM's just moving it around and it's just up in the air, to be honest,
Gotcha.
on the subject of incentives. We haven't assessed Canada. We haven't assessed the United States broadly. We've just kind of got pockets of people researching things. Okay, bear with me.
PCX in Ontario was like Josh had flagged that a couple years ago.
This one is particularly important to Patrick. A way to pull data out of a site without installing additional hardware. So this goes back to the integration. The integration cost represents a large piece of the puzzle, right? And if we can do this without having to put hardware on site, it can cut a significant amount of money. I mean, the Niagara licenses themselves can cost, $10,000, right? If we get away from that, it really helps the value case by reducing that upfront cost. These are 3 questions that we can ask, and we should ask every single site to try to identify if we can avoid our standard integration, right? Does the BAS offer an open API for data access? Does the BAS support automated CSV exports, or does the BAS or its devices support MQTT? These are 3 different ways for us to get information out of their building without having to put our own crap on site.
What's MQTT?
Patrick, do you want to answer that?
Oh, it's a light protocol of communication. BACnet is a heavy one, MQTT is a light one. So there's some kind of API if you want. Just pushing the data to the cloud.
Do you know what MQTT stands for? I'm just curious.
To be honest, I've never even thought about that. I can find that,
No, that's okay. Not a big deal. I can look it up.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Token transfer, I think, is the TT.
Oh,
I don't know.
So you
Just
guys
like
are
a
going to
data
want to ask these questions, because anytime you get a hit and they say yes, because they'll often have to take it and forward it onto their controls contractor or somebody who knows their BAS. They say yes, you go, yes, this increases the likelihood my upfront costs are going to be cheaper and it's easier to make the sale, right? If you don't ask them and then we assume or we're rushing and we do the default solution, then there's downsides. This is so important that Ainsworth, we're only targeting sites that have this with Ainsworth right now. We're not even doing anything else. We're just doing this with Ainsworth. Ones that have yes to that answer.
Okay.
Do you want to add anything, Patrick, on this?
No, I think you have covered them all.
Okay. Number 9, and just for clarity, we've got 14, so we're almost done. This is important for the client to achieve value, and I really want to mention this one: a high degree of contractor support from controls or mechanical. This is more so. You could sell the site without this, but a few years later, your client's going to call you up and be like, "I'm unhappy with the service," because the answer to this question was poor, right? They did not have a high degree of contractor support. RICOM flags issues. We put them in front of them, but we don't solve them. Like they have to take the steps and bring in the people necessary to execute them. If they don't have a plan to do this and are not organized to do this, they will not realize the full benefit of us, right? We're just basically throwing a report in front of them and nothing comes of it. And then they see that in the numbers. They see that we haven't really closed much and they go, well, it was useless. Well, there was things you needed to do, right? So they need to be aware of this up front. So the kind of questions to ask is like, what is your, okay, so, client, we're going to bring these issues for you. What is your plan in place? Like, what is your strategy to execute these, right? Like, how do you want to approach that? What is your plan? Do you have a plan? They need to be aware of that dynamic so that they can set themselves up for success.
Dylan,
Yeah.
have you guys engaged in those sites? Cause I tried to do this with Ainsworth at Livermore. Have you guys tried to engage Ainsworth and then given them, okay, like these are all the problems, like give me a price to actually fix this?
That I don't know.
Is that something we would be open to?
I do know that for 300 McRae, because Livermore is 1180, right?
Well, they both have Ainsworth people on site.
Yeah.
And the BAS contract is one's with Modern Niagara, the other one's with ACCS. But when they didn't have a contract with ACCS, I had asked Ainsworth, like I gave them access to Hive and I said, price out all the problems, give me a number. They're the Quebec team, they were very difficult, they didn't, because they didn't have a contract in place and they didn't want to do a quote. But is there, besides the 1180 one, have you guys, in sites that don't have any help to get this done, do you guys have some kind of a means to maybe go talk to Kevin Potts and be like, Kevin Potts, like, this Prologic building doesn't have a contract in place, like, give me a price to fix all this stuff, and then we present the quote to fix it?
No,
in front of
we've never taken it that far. It perhaps represents an opportunity to sell Ainsworth services to support our clients, but in the past, we've basically just like iterated the problem, tried to reach out to decision makers that can help different sites to execute. But my main point with talking to you guys right now is to instill in you to have the conversation with your clients, right? Like, what is your plan? Like, we want you to do this service.